Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're traveling back hundreds of years to a world where there were no electric heaters, no central heating, no hot showers, no heated blankets, and no weather apps warning people about freezing temperatures. Imagine waking up in the middle of winter when the temperature is far below freezing. Your home is dark, the fire has almost gone out, and the only way to stay alive is through hard work, careful planning, and knowledge passed down through generations. Winter was not simply a season in the past, it was often the greatest challenge of the entire year. Every snowfall, every frozen river, and every icy wind could mean the difference between life and death. So, how did people survive winter without electricity? Let's find out. Long before electricity existed, people understood that surviving winter began many months before the first snow ever fell. Summer and autumn were seasons of preparation. Families knew that once the ground froze, growing food would become impossible. They spent countless hours harvesting crops, drying vegetables, storing grains, collecting nuts, preserving fruits, and gathering herbs. Meat from hunting or livestock was salted, smoked, or dried to last for months. Fish were preserved the same way. Every member of the family had a job because everyone understood that a mistake during autumn could become a disaster in winter. Firewood was perhaps the most valuable resource of all. Entire forests echoed with the sounds of axes as people cut trees throughout the warmer months. Logs were split into smaller pieces and carefully stacked where they could stay dry. A single family might need several tons of firewood just to survive one long winter. If they underestimated how much wood they needed, they risked freezing before spring arrived. Fire wasn't just used for warmth. It was needed for cooking, melting snow into drinking water, drying wet clothing, and even protecting food from freezing solid. Homes were designed differently from modern houses. People understood that keeping heat inside was just as important as creating it. Houses were often built using thick logs, heavy stone walls, packed earth, or clay. The walls were sometimes more than a foot thick, slowing the escape of heat. Roofs were covered with straw, wooden shingles, or thick layers of sod that acted as natural insulation. Windows were tiny compared to today's homes because large windows allowed precious heat to escape. Some poor families had no glass at all, using animal skins or wooden shutters instead. Inside these homes, life centered around the fireplace. It was the heart of the house. Cooking happened there. Clothes dried there. Stories were told around it. Children slept nearby to stay warm. During especially cold nights, family members often slept together in the same room, sometimes even in the same bed, because sharing body heat made a huge difference. Privacy was considered less important than survival. Blankets were nothing like the lightweight blankets we use today. People relied on thick wool blankets, heavy animal furs, sheepskins, and layered clothing. Wool became one of humanity's greatest inventions because it continued to provide warmth even when slightly wet. Multiple layers trapped warm air close to the body. Hats, scarves, gloves, and thick socks were essential because losing heat through the head, hands, and feet could quickly become dangerous. Many people even slept wearing some of their clothes. Removing them during freezing nights could make them dangerously cold before morning. Beds often contained straw mattresses covered with wool, feathers, or animal hides. Wealthier families sometimes used feather-filled bedding, while poorer families depended on whatever natural materials they could gather. Keeping a fire alive throughout the night required skill. Instead of allowing flames to burn quickly, people placed larger logs onto glowing coals before sleeping. These logs burned slowly for many hours. In the morning, they carefully stirred the remaining embers and added dry wood to bring the fire back to life. Starting a completely new fire every freezing morning was difficult, so protecting hot coals overnight became an important daily routine. Food during winter was simple but packed with energy. People needed far more calories because their bodies constantly burned fuel to stay warm. Thick soups, meat stews, bread, porridge, potatoes, beans, cheese, butter, and preserved meats became everyday meals. Warm food raised body temperature and provided the strength needed for physically demanding work. In many regions, people drank warm herbal teas, broths, or heated milk to help fight the cold. Water created another challenge. Rivers and lakes often froze solid. Wells sometimes froze too. Families collected snow or chopped holes through ice to reach fresh water. Snow was melted beside the fire, although it took a surprisingly large amount of snow to produce only a small amount of water. Every drop became valuable. Winter clothing wasn't about fashion. It was about survival. Boots were lined with fur, grass, straw, or wool to keep feet warm. Leather boots alone were not enough because leather could become stiff and cold. Mittens were often warmer than gloves because fingers stayed together, sharing body heat. Some travelers wrapped cloth around their faces, leaving only their eyes exposed to prevent frostbite. Travel during winter was slow and dangerous. Deep snow made walking exhausting. Frozen rivers sometimes became highways because sleds could glide across the ice much faster than wagons could travel through mud. Horses, dogs, oxen, and even reindeer helped transport supplies across snowy landscapes. However, storms could appear suddenly, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Many travelers lost their way and never returned home. Communities understood that surviving winter required cooperation. Neighbors shared food, exchanged firewood, repaired damaged roofs, and helped elderly people who could no longer gather supplies themselves. If one family ran out of wood or food, nearby families often stepped in because everyone knew they might need help themselves someday. In harsh climates, kindness could literally save lives. Children learned survival skills from an early age. They collected sticks for kindling, carried water, fed animals, gathered eggs, repaired clothing, and helped prepare meals. These weren't considered chores, they were necessary contributions to the family's survival. Every pair of hands mattered during winter. Animals also needed protection. Livestock such as cows, sheep, goats, pigs, and chickens were moved into barns designed to block icy winds. Farmers stored huge amounts of hay throughout summer because grazing became impossible once snow covered the fields. Keeping animals alive meant having milk, eggs, meat, wool, and transportation when spring finally returned. One of the biggest dangers was illness. Without electricity, modern hospitals, antibiotics, or advanced heating, even a simple cold could become deadly. Pneumonia claimed countless lives throughout history. Frostbite damaged fingers, toes, ears, and noses. People relied on herbal remedies, warm compresses, homemade soups, and traditional knowledge, but medical options were extremely limited. Prevention was always better than treatment. Darkness also affected daily life. Winter days were much shorter than summer days. Before electric lights, people depended on candles made from beeswax or animal fat, oil lamps, and the fireplace itself. Candles were expensive, so many families conserved them carefully. Once darkness arrived, people often spent evenings repairing tools, sewing clothing, carving wood, spinning wool into thread, telling stories, singing songs, or teaching children family traditions. Some cultures built underground or partially underground homes because the earth naturally stayed warmer than the freezing air above. Others constructed double walls filled with moss, straw, or dried grass for insulation. Indigenous peoples living in Arctic regions developed incredibly advanced winter survival techniques using snow houses, fur clothing, animal fat lamps, and deep knowledge of their environment. These methods allowed them to survive temperatures that many modern people would find almost impossible. Winter storms could isolate villages for weeks. Roads disappeared beneath snowdrifts. Rivers froze. Communication stopped completely. Families had to depend entirely on the supplies they had stored before winter began. Running out of food wasn't simply inconvenient, it could be fatal. Despite these hardships, winter was not always filled with misery. Families spent more time together than during busy farming seasons. They celebrated festivals, shared meals, told stories that were passed from generation to generation, played simple games, made music, and strengthened community bonds. These traditions helped people remain hopeful during the coldest months. Perhaps the greatest lesson from our ancestors is that survival depended on preparation, cooperation, and resilience. They respected nature because they understood they could never control it. Every piece of firewood, every preserved meal, every repaired roof, and every warm blanket represented another chance to survive until spring. Today, we simply press a button to heat our homes. We flip a switch for light. We open a refrigerator full of food and turn on hot water whenever we want. It's easy to forget how extraordinary these comforts truly are. For thousands of years, people survived winter through determination, skill, careful planning, and the willingness to help one another. Their daily lives demanded strength that many of us rarely need to imagine. The next time you step into a warm house on a freezing winter day, take a moment to remember the generations who survived without electricity. Their knowledge, courage, and